Picture this, 300 faces staring, champagne flutes frozen midair, my silk gown whispering against the marble floor, and my own father's hand cracking across my cheek like a thunderclap in a storm. "Take off those ridiculous ribbons," he snarled, loud enough for the whole gala to hear. "You're embarrassing the family, again." I stood there, metals glinting under the chandeliers, heart pounding like incoming artillery. But then, from the shadows of the crowd, my fiancé, a battle-hardened U.S. Army Ranger with more deployments under his belt than most men have regrets, locked eyes with me. In one fluid move, he crossed the room, his grip like iron on my father's wrist. And with 8 words that echoed louder than any explosion I'd ever survived, he turned the tide. "Sir, that's a war hero you just struck. Hi, I'm Sergeant First Class Mia Harlan, sharing the story that broke chains I didn't even know were holding me down. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, stick around. This one's for you. Hit that like button if family wounds cut deep, and subscribe for more raw tales of rising from the ranks. Let's dive in, because sometimes, the real battles aren't fought with bullets, they're won with backbone." You know, growing up in the shadow of Harlan Tower, that gleaming skyscraper piercing the Dallas skyline like a silver dagger, I always thought wealth was supposed to feel like armor. Unbreakable. Shiny. But for me, Sergeant First Class Mia Harlan, it was more like a cage with gold bars. My father, Victor Harlan, wasn't just rich, he was a titan. CEO of Harlan Dynamics, a defense contracting empire that built everything from fighter jets to surveillance drones. Billions in the bank, headlines in Forbes, a penthouse that overlooked the city like he owned the stars themselves. To the world, he was untouchable. To me, he was a ghost in a 3-piece suit, present in body, absent in soul. I was 8 the first time I remember him looking at me like I was a glitch in his perfect system. It was Christmas Eve, snow dusting the French windows of our estate in Highland Park. Mom had just finished wrapping the last gift, a delicate porcelain doll for me, because even then, she knew I preferred climbing trees over tea parties. Dad burst in from a board meeting, tie askew, barking orders at the staff like they were privates in boot camp. I was in the corner, dressed in his old army surplus jacket I'd found in the attic, way too big, sleeves dangling like elephant trunks. I'd pinned a makeshift badge on the lapel, a shiny bottle cap I'd polished with my thumbnail. "Look, Daddy!" I squealed, saluting him with all the gusto of a kid who'd binge-watched every war movie on VHS. "I'm a soldier, just like Grandpa Harlan was in Nam." He froze, glass of scotch in hand, ice clinking like warning bells. His eyes, those sharp, steel-gray eyes that could close a deal or crush a rival, narrowed on me. For a split second, I thought he'd laugh, scoop me up like in the stories Mom told about his wild college days. Instead, he set the glass down with a deliberate thud. "Mia," he said, voice low and edged like a blade, "soldiers are for families without options. We Harlans? We command the soldiers. Take that rag off before you ruin the carpet." He didn't yell. He didn't have to. His words landed like shrapnel, embedding deep. Mom hovered in the doorway, her smile brittle as spun sugar. "Victor, it's just play," she murmured, but he waved her off. "Playtime's over, Elena. Teach her what's expected." Wait, no, that's not right. Mom's name was Lydia, always Lydia with her soft southern drawl and wild garden herbs. But in that moment, as I shrugged off the jacket, tears stinging like sand in a windstorm, I felt the first fracture. Wealth, I learned young, buys silence. Not safety. Those early years blurred into a montage of polished expectations. Private tutors drilling me on Mandarin and market trends before I'd mastered multiplication. Galas where I'd stand like a porcelain figurine, nodding as Dad paraded me before investors, my little heiress, future boardroom star. But inside, I was sketching dog tags in the margins of my economics notebook, hiding issues of Stars and Stripes under my mattress. Grandpa Harlan's stories, the ones Mom whispered after Dad's bedtime scotch, fueled the fire. He'd been a grunt in Vietnam, crawling through jungles with nothing but grit and a garand. Valor isn't inherited, me a bug, he'd rasp, his liver-spotted hands tracing faded tattoos. It's forged. One choice at a time. He passed when I was 10, leaving me his dog tags on a leather cord. I wore them under my starched blouses, a secret talisman against the Harlan polish. Mom was my anchor in that storm. Lydia Harlan, the quiet force behind Victor's empire, she handled the charity boards, the social calendars, the invisible threads that kept our world from unraveling. She had laugh lines like riverbeds, eyes the color of Gulf Coast sunsets, and a way of saying my name, Maya, that made it sound like a battle cry wrapped in honey. Don't let him dim your light, sugar, she'd say, braiding my hair by the vanity, the scent of lavender oil thick in the air. Your grandpa didn't fight for boardrooms. He fought for folks like us to choose our own paths. She'd sneak me to the air show at Love Field, where we'd watch F-16s rip the sky, her hand squeezing mine as the afterburners roared. That's freedom, Mia. Not the kind you buy, the kind you earn. But even Mom couldn't shield me forever. By 12, Dad's dismissals sharpened into scalpels. I brought home a report card, straight A's, sure, but with a history project on D-Day that earned me a regional essay contest. Incredible! Mom beamed, framing the certificate beside my first-place ribbon from the school track meet. Dad glanced at it over his morning Wall Street Journal, snorted. Essays on beaches and bullets? Save it for the help, Mia. Real wars are won in the C-suite. He crumpled the certificate like yesterday's stock tip, tossing it into the recycling bin. I fished it out later, ironing the creases flat with Mom's travel steamer, whispering promises to the paper, I'll make you proud anyway. High school was the forge. St. Mark's Academy, all ivy walls and legacy admissions, where trust fund kids debated derivatives while I dreamed of drop zones. I joined the JV track team, sprints, because distance running felt too much like waiting for Dad's approval. Coach Ramirez, a retired Marine with a buzz cut and a limp from Fallujah, saw something in my stride. Harlan, you run like you're out pacing demons, he'd bark during wind sprints, whistle shrill as a mortar round. Under his wing, I lettered in cross-country, clocking sub-6 miles on the rolling hills of White Rock Lake. Medals piled up, silver at regionals, bronze at state, but Dad? He sent a courier with a signed card, focus on SATs. Athletics are amateur hour. Mom framed them in my room anyway, a secret gallery of grit. It was sophomore year when the rift became a chasm. The Naval Academy, no, wait, for me, it was West Point. The dream that had simmered since Grandpa's tags first warmed my skin. I pored over the application in stolen hours, essays typed on Mom's old Underwood. Leadership isn't about commanding from towers, it's about standing in the dirt with your team when the world tilts sideways. I submitted it on a whim, or so I told myself, the night of Dad's annual harvest gala. 300 guests in black tie, crystal clinking like distant gunfire, laughter echoing off the ballroom's gilded ceilings. I was 15, in a powder blue gown that itched like wool socks in July, circulating with a tray of canapes because Harlan served with grace. Dad cornered me by the grand piano, his breath Scotch sweet. Heard a rumor, Mia. West Point? That's not ambition, that's escape. His voice was velvet over rebar, eyes scanning the room for eavesdroppers. If you chase that fantasy, don't look back for a safety net. We build empires, not foxholes. I swallowed hard, the words I'd rehearsed dissolving like sugar in rain. It's my choice, Dad. Like you chose Harvard. He laughed, a bark that turned heads. Choices have consequences, girl. Yours will be regret. He walked away, clapping a senator on the back, leaving me adrift in a sea of silk and small talk. Mom found me later, tucked in the library with tear-streaked cheeks. He doesn't see you yet, honey, she soothed, dabbing my face with a monogrammed hanky. But I do. And so does the girl in the mirror. She helped me polish my boots that night, the ones I bought with babysitting cash, and we mapped out the future like a fire team recon, SAT prep, summer leadership camps, letters from Coach Ramirez. Acceptance came in December, thick envelopes stamped with the long gray line. Mom threw a quiet party, just us, apple pie from the diner, and a playlist of Springsteen anthems. To Mia Harlan, she toasted, glasses of sparkling cider raised. Cadet, hero, unbreakable. Dad? He left a note on the kitchen island, proud in your way. Tuition's on me, for now. It was the closest he came to approval. Or surrender. West Point hit like a freight train at full throttle. Beast Barracks, those first grueling weeks of summer, stripped me bare. Dawn reveille blaring like a klaxon, plebe year a blur of push-ups in the mud, rifle drills till my palms blistered raw. Upperclassmen howling cadences. When my grandma was 91, she did PT just for fun. I was the girl from the penthouse, fumbling M4 disassembly while farm-raised cadets from Iowa oiled theirs like second nature. But I adapted. God, did I adapt. By fall, I was leading squad PT runs along the Hudson, breath fogging the river as we chanted, 1 mile more, what the hell for? To win the freaking war. Academics? Brutal. Engineering courses that made quantum physics look like coloring books, but I aced them, fueled by midnight coffee and mom's care packages, homemade jerky, notes scrawled in loopy script. You're not just surviving, Mia. You're soaring. The real tempering came in the field. Summer training at Camp Buckner, land NAV courses through pine thickets, where you'd plot azimuths by starlight, compass needle your only friend. I got lost once, thigh-deep in a creek, leeches latching like bad decisions. Harlan, you good? My squad mate, a lanky Texan named Reyes, called from the bank. Peachy, I gasped, yanking free and slogging upstream. We summit that ridge at 4 o'clock, stars winking like distant fireflies, and I learned, direction isn't given, it's clawed from the dark. Dad's visits were rare, a stiff luncheon in the Thayer Hotel, where he'd critique my posture over rubber chicken. Postures for parades, Mia. Profits are for posterity. I'd nod, medals from intramural comps tucked away, but inside? A slow burn. Mom's calls were lifelines, tell me about the river runs, baby. Does it freeze like the Brazos in '89? She'd laugh at my stories of hazing pranks, flower bombs at mess formation, and whisper, that's my warrior queen. Graduation was a pinnacle wrapped in ache. May sun gilding the plain, 1,200 cadets in step, sabers flashing like lightning. I commissioned as a second lieutenant, branch artillery, fire support, the thunder behind the tip of the spear. Mom flew in, front row, tears carving rivers down her cheeks as they called my name, Harlan, Mia Elise, United States Army. She rushed the stage after, pinning my bars with trembling fingers. "Look at you," she breathed, hugging fierce. Dad stood back, arms crossed, a polite clap lost in the roar. "Well done," he said later, over lukewarm coffee. Now, about that internship at Dynamics. I met his gaze, steady as a gunner's sight. "Fort Sill first, sir. Duty calls." He nodded, jaw tight, the first crack in his armor I ever saw. But life doesn't hand you ribbons without the thorns. My first deployment, OIF Extension, 2010, was a baptism in sand and sweat. Forward Operating Base Caldwell, Kirkuk Province, where the air shimmered like a mirage and IEDs whispered threats from the shoulders. I was a fire direction officer, plotting trajectories for 155mm howitzers that boomed like God's own wrath. Days blurred, dawn patrols with the infantry, plotting fire missions as tracer rounds stitched the night. One op stands out, a night raid gone sideways. Our QRF rolled out hot, Humvee convoy snaking through wadis under NVG's green as envy. Tracer fire lanced from a rooftop, pinging off the lead vehicle's armor like angry hornets. "Contact, right flank," the driver yelled, swerving as RPG swooshed past, blooming fireballs in the dust. I was in the second truck, radio crackling, "This is Bravo 2, requesting fire support, grid Echo 9er Zulu." Heart slamming like a bass drum, I crunched numbers on the laptop, wind whipping grit into my eyes. "Splash over," I called, and the big guns answered, thunder rolling from base, shells arcing invisible. But then, chaos. Our lead Humvee hit a culvert, flipping end over end in a screech of metal and screams. I bailed out, M4 up, low crawling to the wreck. Smoke chokered thick, acrid, the gunner, Specialist Torres, a wiry kid from El Paso with a rosary tucked in his vest, slumped against the door, leg mangled, femoral artery spurting like a severed hose. "Torques! Hang on!" I screamed, stripping my belt for a tourniquet, cinching it tight above the knee. Blood hot on my hands, sticky as regret. Medic inbound, 2 mics. But the fire team was pinned, insurgents pouring lead from mud huts. I dragged him 10 yards to cover, bullets chewing divots in the sand beside us. "You got this, LT," he gasped, face ashen, clutching my sleeve. "Just like that time in basic, you carried my ruck." I radioed for the hello, voice steady as rebar, "Eagle 6, this is Harlan, priority evac, multiple casualties." The Black Hawk thumped in 20 minutes later, rotors a blessing roar, and we loaded him aboard. He made it, barely, Purple Heart and a prosthetic waiting stateside. Me? Bronze Star recommendation, but the wait? That stayed. Back at FOB, debriefs dragged like hangovers. Colonel Hayes, my CO, grizzled vet with a mustache like a broom bristle, clapped my shoulder. "Harlan, you didn't just save a life. You held the line." But the nightmares? They followed me home on the C-17, ghosts in the cargo hold. Mom met my flight at DFW, arms open wide, no questions, just her famous gumbo waiting, spicy enough to scorch the shadows. "Welcome back, soldier girl," she said, stirring the pot, steam rising like battlefield fog. "Dad?" A fruit basket from the office, card and signed. Silence, his oldest weapon. Deployments piled like cordwood, OEF in the stand, advising ANA units on mountain passes where avalanches were as likely as ambushes. I led fire support for a platoon pinned in a box canyon, adjusting for windage as mortars walked the ridge. Earned my combat action badge there, the tabs sewn crooked by a PX seamstress with shaky hands. Between tours, West Point reunions, ring dinners where alums swapped war stories over steak, laughter cutting the cigar smoke. That's where I met him. Captain Jax Ryder, U.S. Army Ranger, 75th Regiment, with eyes like smoked quartz and a drawl from the Smoky Mountains that could charm a cobra. We bonded over bad coffee at a alumni mixer, him in his Class A's, me fresh from a ruck march, boots still caked in Virginia red clay. "You look like you've seen some miles, Lieutenant," he said, sliding into the booth, his Ranger tab glinting like a dare. I laughed. First real one in weeks. Jax Ryder? The guy who fast-roped into that Taliban nest in Kunar last year? Pot, kettle. Turns out, we'd crossed paths indirectly. My battery supported his company's exfil in Helmand. We talked till the bar closed, his first halo jump, free-falling through thunderheads, my OIF drag, the metallic tang of blood on my tongue. "Duty's a jealous mistress," he quipped, clinking mugs. "But she makes damn fine company." By dawn, numbers exchanged, promises to link at Bragg. Our worlds collided slow, like tectonic plates. Weekend leaves, him sneaking up from Fort Benning, me driving the rental Beamer from Sill. Picnics at Eisenhower's grave site, where we'd trace the stones of giants, Patton, MacArthur. "These men didn't chase titles," Jack said one afternoon, sprawl on the grass, his head in my lap. "They chased the fight worth winning." I traced his scars, puckered white lines from shrapnel and Mosul, and felt seen. Not as Victor Harlan's daughter, but as Mia, the LT who called for fire when the world burned. The proposal? Simple as a sunrise patrol. We'd stolen a weekend at Assateague Island, off-season, dunes whispering secrets to the Atlantic. Dawn broke cold, waves gnashing like angry teeth. We walked the pier, him in civvies, me in sweats, dog tags swinging free. "Mia Harlan," he said, dropping to one knee on the weathered boards, ring box salt-crusted from his pocket. No flash mob, no fireworks, just the gulls crying overhead and his voice, steady as a sniper's breath. "I've rode through hell with you in spirit. Row the rest with me?" "For keeps." The diamond caught the light, modest, 1 carat, flanked by black opals like night ops under stars. I said yes before he finished, tackling him into the sand, laughter bubbling like suppressed rounds. Word reached Dad via the society pages, a blurry photo from a mutual friend's wedding, Jax's arm around me, both in subtle service garb. The call came midnight my time, 2100 hours his, engaged? To some jarhead grunt? "Mia, this is beneath you." I paced the barracks, phone hot against my ear. Ranger, Dad. Elite. And he's more man than your boardroom ever birthed. Silence, then, your wedding, if you insist, will be proper. No uniforms, no theatrics. Harlan legacy demands it. Click. Mom texted later, he's scared, sugar. Of losing his grip. Ignore the noise. But ignoring Victor Harlan? Like ignoring a howitzer in your foxhole. Promotion to captain came mid-engagement, silver bar swap in the motor pool, grease monkeys cheering as Jax pinned them crooked. I called home beaming, voicemail from Mom, joy spilling over, from Dad, Kurt, Captain Harlan. Adequate. When's the date? We set it for June, my leave window, his between rotations. Venue, the grand ballroom at the Dallas Fairmont, 300 guests, his Rolodex of tycoons, my patchwork of platoon mates and academy buds. Theme, timeless elegance, per the planner he hired without asking. My dress? Ivory silk, off-shoulder, with a nod to my roots, a sash where I'd pin select ribbons, subtle as a shadow. Pre-wedding frenzy was a minefield. Bridal showers at the country club, where sorority types cooed over china patterns while I dodged questions. Army life? Glamorous. Jax's bachelor bash, low-key, cigars and carbine drills in the hill country, felt like home. Mom and I stole fittings, her health fading like a bad signal. Cancer, stage 3, caught late. Chemo sapped her glow, but she rallied for alterations, fingers nimble on the lace. You'll stun Mia. Jax too, though he already knows. Her eyes twinkled, but the cough lingered, wet as regret. Promise me one thing, she whispered, pinning a cameo brooch, her mother's, etched with wild roses. Wear your truth, even if it ruffles feathers. Harlan's bend, but we don't break. The day dawned brutal, Texas heat wave, 102 in the shade, air thick as flack. I woke in the bridal suite, Jax's text lighting my phone, see you at the altar, Captain. Don't be late, that's an order. Laughter bubbled as I suited up, dress flowing like a banner, makeup soft, winged liner sharp as a bayonet, lips crimson like warning flags. The medals? 3 pins only, Bronze Star, CAB, and Grandpa's dog tags looped as a necklace. Subtle. Defiant. Hair in loose waves, veil a whisper of tulle. Mom helped with the zipper, her hands frail but sure. Gorgeous, she breathed, dabbing gloss. My girl, all fire and grace. Guests assembled by 1600 hours, 300 strong, the room a sea of tuxes in gowns, orchids exploding in crystal vases, string quartet sawing pachelbel like a lullaby. Dad's side dominated, venture capitalists nursing whiskeys, senators with practiced smiles. Mine? A rowdy contingent, Torres on crutches, prosthetic gleaming, Reyes with his new bride, Colonel Hayes in mess dress, mustache trimmed fierce. Jax waited at the altar, resplendent in his own dress blues, Ranger tab proud, eyes locking mine across the aisle like a fire mission zeroed. Processional swelled, cannon in D, notes climbing like a hello ascent. I walked arm in arm with Mom, her steps measured, Dad notably absent from escort duty. Tradition, he'd muttered that morning. Halfway down, whispers rippled, my pins catching light, murmurs of is that military? Jax's grin widened, a private salute in his stance. Then, the toast line. Dad commandeered the mic, unscripted, his gala specialty. Ladies and gentlemen, he boomed, glass raised, face flushed under the spots. To Mia and Jax. A union of worlds. May she find the stability she so valiantly seeks. Tittering from his crowd, but then, the pivot. His eyes on me, metals winking. Though I must say, darling, those trinkets? Save them for the VFW. Tonight's for celebration, not campaigns. Remove them, now. You're a Harlan, not an enlistee. The room inhaled sharp. Mom's hand tightened on mine, knuckles bone white. Heat crawled my neck, not shame, fury, molten as white phosphorus. Dad, I said, voice carrying clear, these aren't trinkets. They're my service. My honor. Guests shifted, forks pausing on lobster thermidor. His face darkened, a storm front rolling. Honor? This is embarrassment. Take them off. Step forward, invading my space, the scent of his cologne cloying as cordite. And then, the slap. Palm cracking my cheek, a pistol report in the hush. Stars burst, skin blooming fire, the cameo brooch skittering across the floor like a spent casing. Time fractured. Gasps rippled, chairs scraping as bodies tensed. Mom gasped, hand to mouth, Torres half rose, crutch clattering. Jax, oh, Jax, uncoiled from the altar like a spring-loaded trap. 20 paces in 3 seconds, his presence a vacuum, sucking air from the room. He didn't charge, he flowed, hand closing on Dad's wrist, not wrenching, but firm, unyielding as rebar in concrete. Their eyes met, Victor's bulging, Jax's calm, a predator's gaze honed in the Hindu Kush. Sir, Jax said, voice low thunder, every syllable drilled in Ranger School, that's a decorated U.S. Army officer you just struck. 8 words. A gauntlet thrown. The room detonated, not in chaos, but unity. First Torres, on your feet, he bellowed, prosthetic thumping as he stood, salute snapping crisp. Reyes followed, then the platoon, 20 strong, fists to brows, a wall of blue. Civilian guests rose hesitant, then firm, a wave of solidarity cresting. Senators averting eyes, tycoons murmuring retreat. Dad wrenched free, wrist red as accusation, face ashen. This is outrageous, he sputtered, but the mic was dead, quartet silent. Mom stepped forward, cameo reclaimed, pinning it back with trembling grace. Enough, Victor. She's twice the legacy you'll ever build. Jax released, turning to me, thumb gentle on my stinging cheek, eyes fierce with unspoken vows. You good, Captain? Whisper only for us. I nodded, tears hot but unbidden. Always, with you. The officiant cleared his throat, voice steady, shall we proceed? And we did. Vows exchanged in the charged air, Jax's steady, in peace and fire, I choose you. Mine, through dust and dawn, my line's yours. Ring slid on, simple gold bands etched with coordinates, our first kiss under Hellman's stars. Cheers erupted as we recessed, not polite claps but roars, my military family whooping cadences, hooah! Hooah! Mia and Jax, through and through. Reception blurred in victory haze. Toasts from Hayes, to Captain Harlan, fire caller, line holder, unbreakable. Cake cut with sabers, tradition sharp as justice. Dad? Vanished before the first dance, limo peeling out like a tactical retreat. Mom pulled me aside mid-waltz, her waltz with Jax a gift of borrowed time. You did it, sugar. Chose true. We swayed to it last, her head on my shoulder, frail but fierce. She passed 3 months later, pancreatic thief in the night, but her last words, texted from hospice, were the pins always. Love, your tide turner. That slap? It wasn't defeat. It was detonation. Dad's empire chugged on, headlines of mergers, profiles in power, but cracks spiderwebbed. Invites dried, whispers of the incident poisoned the pool. He called once, post-honeymoon, water under the bridge, Mia? I paused, Jax's hand in mine, our new apartment in Fayetteville smelling of fresh paint and possibility. No, Dad. It's the river we swim now. Join or watch from the bank. Click. Years on, I'm Sergeant First Class, promoted post-ranger course, where Jax and I train side by side, Rux humping the Appalachians till dawn. Deployments shared, him on direct action, me on fires, radios linking us like lifelines. Torres visits, prosthetic upgraded, kids calling me Auntie Mia. We host barbecues, brats on the grill, stories swapped under string lights. Dad? Christmas cards, stiff as starch. Progress, maybe. But here's the truth, respect isn't minted in vaults or voted in boardrooms. It's hammered in the heat, when the world's screaming retreat, and you hold. That night, with 300 witnesses, I didn't just marry Jax. I buried the girl who dimmed for approval. Rose the woman who shines for the fight. Because in the army of life, we don't just survive the hits. We counter. Hua.